The land around Puki village smelled of disturbed earth, fresh grass, and life. A light breeze swept from the surrounding chestnut trees into the guests happily chatting around tables of food and drink. It was an eclectic group of partiers. Some wore tattered clothes that hadn't been washed in weeks, while others wore glaring white cultivation robes. Taoists and beggars alike ate at the same tables, all enjoying the same joyous celebration. From the foot of a mountain to the south, a lone figure observed their revelry. The fine skin of his handsome face was pale like polished seashells, yet he bore the visage of one who had experienced death of the soul long before his body died. The light of the jovial surroundings somehow failed to reflect off his deep golden eyes. A waft of salty sea air blew past as the black-robed figure slipped quietly into the interior of Puki's shrine. Gifts were stacked practically to the ceiling beside the brightly painted crown prince statue. He Xuan silently added a small box to the hoard before turning his gaze back to the yard. One particular beggar stood out among the rest. He dragged one of his legs when he walked, and one of his arms hung lamely at his side. Yet his eyes veritably shone with happiness, and his laugh sounded at every joke. He Xuan's eyes locked onto this man, whose life had been dragged from the heavens down to the lowest part of the earth, but who still shone as brightly as he remembered. He Xuan patted a fellow beggar on the back as he laughed heartily. The sight brought back memories of another feast, this one bathed in pretentious finery. At it, he had busily partaken of the offered food and drink alongside He Xuan. The other had laughed and patted him on the back the same way. Ming Shen, he had called out during his endless chatter. Slightly annoying, yet the memory brought a complicated expression to He Xuan's face. His fingers absently stroked the narwhal horn flask tied to his hip as his face softened slightly. All at once, one of the cultivators seemed to be putting up a fuss about something. He Xuan and the object of Hua Cheng's obsession responded by heading toward the shrine, along with two finely clothed heavenly officials. He Xuan wasted no time in ducking behind the enormous stack of gifts. In his hurry, his hip smacked soundly against the wall, hard enough to disturb the cork of the narwhal horn bottle. He Xuan paid it no mind as he listened to the goings-on in the room. The group of four had seemingly entered the kitchen, providing quite the shock for the two heavenly dandies. As always, Shalian tried to smooth things over. "Didn't I say you couldn't do this?" he asked the chicken spirit that was producing shockingly enticing aromas. He Xuan peeked out from behind the pile of gifts as the two argued. He was just in time to see the two heavenly dandies fling away their partially eaten bowls in disgust, an atrocity if ever there was one. The very sight of it made the skin on the back of his neck prickle in irritation. Nonetheless, he was silently gratified to see that the formerly spoiled He Xuan reacted with utter calm. He even nibbled on the ends of his chopsticks as he listened to the others complain. The corners of He Xuan's lips twitched, almost as if he were tempted to smile. The group drifted back outside, where they were met by the same cultivator who had been causing problems before. The cultivator seemed to be concerned about the evil key on Shalian's body. This elicited an eye roll from He Xuan. Really, were ghosts not allowed intimacy with the ones they loved? Why should they, of all people, be barred from such things? The two heavenly dandies had gone completely silent. Meanwhile, Shalian was in the process of having a stroke from embarrassment. Amusingly, He Xuan seemed to be the only one who failed to grasp the implications of the cultivator's words. The concern was clear on his face as he demanded whether Shalian really was ill. At this moment, Hua Cheng sauntered over and was immediately bombarded with questions from He Xuan. The sight of Hua Cheng caused something in He Xuan's pocket to wriggle excitedly, and he smacked it in irritation. His eyes darkening, He Xuan watched He Xuan eventually finish his questions and melt back into the crowd. On his way to rejoin his lower city friends, He Xuan's bad leg caught on a table leg, sending him headfirst into a freshly prepared bowl of rice. Plump white granules coated his body from his outstretched arm to his chest. He Xuan reacted by laughing the whole thing off as if it were nothing, but the sight turned He Xuan's already cold expression to ice. He watched He Xuan brush off the rice with a hard expression, yet somewhere in his golden eyes was something that might have been pain. In a flash of black robes, He Xuan flickered into the kitchen. Just as quickly, the endless bowls of soup and rice had been devoured, all of them poured into a void that food could never fill. Screams rang out as the chicken and boar spirits discovered the disappearance of their efforts. He Xuan barely heard them as he retired to an empty rice barrel to sleep off his ensuing coma. After grumpily wrapping his robes around his body, he drifted off to sleep. No sooner had He Xuan's eyelids closed than something moved in the pocket of his robes. From the pocket full of seawater emerged a small bonefish, shrunken down to the size of a man's palm. As the senior-most of He Xuan's bonefish, Peanut Jr. had long since cultivated the ability to adjust his size for the sake of convenience. With a happy flick of his tail, he hopped out of the rice barrel and into the kitchen. The chicken and boar spirits had already resumed their work of cooking up another round of food. Peanut Jr. ignored them and flopped his way to the altar room of Puki's shrine. He had recognized Daddy Hua Cheng's voice earlier and couldn't wait to show off his latest talents. Unfortunately, by this time, Hua Cheng had already whisked He Xuan away with his own ideas in mind. Peanut Jr. was left to amuse himself at the party in the yard. Ghost fish do not need to breathe, but the occasional dousing in a warm bowl of chicken spirit soup was quite refreshing. The partygoers never even noticed the tiny bonefish hopping from bowl to shoulder to table around them. Junior was in the process of inventing a game using a cultivator's head crown as a diving board when a commotion broke out at the doorway to the shrine. The noisy cultivator from before was howling at a hooded figure leading an ox cart up the road to the shrine. The cultivator was pointing an accusing finger and yelling things like "essence of evil" and "my heaven's eye." The cart driver stood completely still for several long minutes. Finally, he raised a long bony hand to sweep away his oversized hood. The face that was revealed bore an unnaturally wide smile of vivid red on a white papier-mâché background. This really got the cultivator worked up, and he was quickly joined by several of his friends. The scene only devolved from there, and Peanut Jr. leaned forward to watch the whole show in amusement. The cultivators and the cart driver ghost hurled insults at each other and were about to come to blows when an official in a general's uniform got in between them. Much to Junior's disappointment, the official managed to quiet everyone down and send them on their separate ways. After playing around late into the night, Peanut Jr. returned to the kitchen and dove into a large pot of leftover soup. It was the perfect place to cultivate for the rest of the night, or longer, depending on how long Daddy He Xuan stayed in his food coma. As he was happily splashing about in the fragrant broth, he heard the voices of several lingering partygoers. His Highness and Hua Qingju must have already gone to sleep. The least we can do is help out with the cleanup. The speaker was a beggar with a bad arm and lame leg. He heavied a large stack of bowls onto the counter and continued energetically. "This really meant the world to us lot. It is the most food any of us have seen in years." Wiping his hands on his raggedy clothes, the man sighed. "It really brings back memories of old times." He subconsciously leaned against a barrel labeled rice, his eyes unfocused as if in reminiscence. If Peanut Jr. had still had gills, they would have frozen with apprehension as he waited to see what would happen. However, the beggar remained oblivious to the barrel's true contents as he straightened and finished helping with the cleanup. Once everyone left and all was quiet, Peanut Jr. stilled his thorny fins into a steady rhythm and focused on his own version of fishy cultivation. The next thing he knew, his bony little body was surrounded by fabric. His mouth was filled not with the rich aroma of chicken soup, but with the saltiness of seawater. It took several long moments for his groggy little fishy mind to run through some theories of what had happened. Had Master woken early and already restowed him in his pocket? Usually after a meal like that, Daddy He Xuan would have been out for at least a week straight.
This whole thing was very strange. He Xuan was standing, extremely still, and seemed to be bent forward slightly. There was the muffled sound of voices in the distance, possibly from another room. Next, he heard He Lian's voice. Peanut Jr. liked that person. Not only was he a friend of Daddy Hua Cheng, but he was also nice. However, the words that came from him next made Peanut Jr.'s spinal bones stand on end. "Didn't I say you couldn't do this?" He Lian asked.